Hello friends, welcome back to Aunt Debbie's Boutique. Today we are going to make either a quilt block or a potholder, whichever you want it to be. But before we get started, I just want to thank everyone for commenting on my last video and giving me some direction on which way to take this channel. And the conclusion I've come to, at least for the time being, is I'm going to try to put out one complete quilt a month, and then I will have at least one other short video per month that most of the time will have something to do with quilting, like a potholder or a table runner or something that's easier to tackle, shorter sewing time for me. And then occasionally I'm going to throw in there something just totally unexpected, like maybe we'll make a child's shirt or just anything that maybe some gift items or some bags or wallets or something like that. It seems like the majority of the people are in the intermediate, probably advanced beginner to intermediate stage of sewing, which is probably to be expected. I did have a couple of experts who could probably teach me a thing or two, and a couple of very new beginners. So I'm trying to keep everybody in mind as we go along. The majority of the people said they would like to see other things besides, or they wouldn't mind, I should say, seeing other things besides quilts all the time. Although there were a few who quilting was their only interest. So that's where I'm going to take the channel for now, and we'll see how that works. I do have one small caveat, and that is I'm moving. This was something I did not plan, just something that kind of came up, and so I am in the middle of packing right now. So we may have a few short videos for the next month until I get settled at my new place, but I'm going to have a much bigger sewing room with a lot better lighting, and it's going to be a lot better deal. So I look forward to getting settled again, and then I will be real serious about one quilt a month. So thank you those who did respond. It was very helpful, even though it was a very small percentage of people who viewed the channel. But as you probably have guessed, this is today's project. But before we start on that, I have another favor of y'all. I would like some help. As I was packing, I'm cleaning out stuff, and I found these very, very old quilt blocks that my grandmother made. There's 6 of them, and I just love them. It's real funny. They are very poorly put together by today's standards. Of course, they're all hand sewn, but corners don't meet, and they're not square at all, as you can probably tell. So it's going to be a little bit of a challenge to use them. Here's one that's got a big, maybe that'll kind of iron out, but I'm not sure, big fold in it. But I would like to incorporate these into a quilt somehow. But I don't have much experience with older fabrics like this. I don't want them to disintegrate. I don't know if there's anything I should do special for them. I mean, look here, these are nowhere near the same size. This is sticking way up here, but they were made with tender, loving care, and they're special to me. So I do want to incorporate them, but I am open to any suggestion on how to do that, what sort of quilt pattern, if any of you have done that. I would love to get some feedback before I just start in there and then do something I regret. So any help you can give me on my grandmother's quilt blocks. I didn't even know I had these. They were at the bottom of a box of patterns. I knew I had the patterns. So I'm going to set these aside now, but I do covet your input. Okay, back to today's project. The title of my video was, is this a potholder or is this a quilt block? And the answer is both. When we get it all sewed together, it can be used as a quilt block, and you can make many more and make a quilt out of it, or we can make a pot holder out of it. Now this is going to be an extra big pot holder, and I'll explain why in a little bit, but I am using are you facing me? I've got you upside down to me today. Okay, I need to change that a little bit. But here is the book I'm using. Is called 100 Quick to Quilt Pot Holders. I haven't checked to see if it's still available. I've had this for a few years, 4 or 5 probably. It was published in 2004, but it has a lot of cute pot holders, and they're all quilt blocks. They're not, they're all ones you can use as a quilt block. And here on the back side, you can see even a better picture of all of them that are available. So I went through this. Let me see if it's authored by anybody in particular, or if it's just, it's put out by the House of White Birches, so it's probably not one specific person. I went through there and I picked out a pattern I wanted to do. And it's this blossom block. And I don't really care for the way they put it together, because it's too much of the same colors, and to me it's kind of hard to see. But I mean, it's pretty, don't get me wrong, but I want mine to have more contrast than that. So I had just gotten in a Mrs. Quilty's box that had fat quarters in it, and I am in the process of packing up all my fabric. And so since I had that in, I just thought this would make a pretty pot holder. Now the good thing about this book, I guess it's good, it's how you want to look at it, is it has all your pattern pieces for you. I'm just going to show you a glimpse of those. But it's got them in 2 sizes, 6-inch for a 6-inch pot holder, or 12-inch. So I guess probably they were thinking the 12-inch would be a quilt block and the 6-inch would be a pot holder. But there was a couple of pieces missing in the 6-inch, or I couldn't find them. I'm not going to accuse them of being missing. They weren't on the page with the other ones, and maybe they're stuck someplace else, and I just didn't look hard enough. But so I opted to go with the 12-inch because I think a 6-inch pot holder is pretty small. I always make mine between 7 and 8 inches. And I love big ones because you can set pots on them, and they're useful for both small and large things. So that's what we're going to make today. Now, I traced the pieces out, and the squares I just measured them and cut, and I've got all my pieces cut out. So I'm going to lay this aside because I want to be able to glance at the pattern when I'm putting it together. Now what you need is, let me lay all this aside. You're going to need a 12-inch background square, not a background, but backing of the pot holder. If you're making a pot holder, you don't need this if you're making a quilt block. And I think this would be beautiful in all different colored blocks. Then you're going to need a 12-inch square of Insel Bright, or this is the Pellon version. I buy it by the bolt. I don't know what it's called. I will put it in the description box. I'm sorry, I should have looked that up. But something similar like that, some insulated batting. And then 2 pieces of just regular batting. I forgot to cut these apart. And I don't usually use these 2 pieces of regular batting, but that's what the manufacturer's suggestion is, and it's both on the Pellon and on the Insel Bright. So I am going to go with it. I did it one time and it worked out okay. It makes for a very thick pot holder, but it's a very well insulated one. So, okay, we're not going to need those until we put the pot holder together. Then you need some binding, and I am just, for this one, I am going to use just some regular old black bias tape. And the main reason is because so many of my fabrics are packed up and I didn't have enough of the fat quarter. I used these 3 fat quarters, and I didn't have, I probably could have gotten out one of the bright ones, but I didn't want it that bright. So I am just going to opt to use bias tape for this, and it works perfectly well, but you can also use regular fabric. And I am going to try doing the binding different than I ever have before. I'm going to follow their plan in this book, which is very interesting the way they make their loop. So I thought I would try it, and it'll be the first time I did it, so we can learn together whether we like it. Okay, the first thing I want to do is put together the corner blocks. Okay, so what we're going to need, this is the same pattern piece, but you cut half of them this way and half of them this way, so they go together like that. So the first thing I am going to do is I'm going to take these over to the sewing machine. And I'm going to sew these together. Now, because the pattern pieces had the little corners cut off, you know how you usually have dog ears, these are going to fit perfectly, which is really easy. You don't have to worry if you've got it lined up. So I'm going to go sew these 4 together, and I'll bring them back over here, and we will iron them then, and we'll go to the next step. So follow me to the. Okay, I'm using my 1/4" foot for this, so you can, it has a little flange here on the side, and you just butt your fabric right up next to it. And I'm using a leader here so I can get a running start, and I'm going to chain these blocks. Okay, I have you turned the right direction now so that you're looking at it the same way I am. Sorry about that. I'm going to cut these apart. And since this is just a pot holder, I'm not worried about the weight on the seams. So I am just going to iron these seams open and not worry about which direction to iron everything. It takes a little more time to do it that way, but it's also all I found after making that last quilt that I ironed them open on. It makes it easier to get your corners all lined up good. So there are pros and cons to it. It's just in a big heavy quilt, you don't have the strength in your seams if you iron them open like you do when you iron them to one side or another. But I'm not too worried about it on a pot holder. This is what takes me longest, just getting it started open. I might even end the viewing area. I'm sorry about that. I'm still adjusting to this new setup, and now I'm going to have to adjust again when I move. Okay, now the next step is taking these little triangles, and they should fit perfectly on each side, and we're going to sew one on that side and one on this side. So what I will do is take my other machine and I'll chain all of them going on this one side, then I'll go back to the top and chain the other side. So let's go do that real quickly. Okay, let's iron these seams open. Okay. Now the next step is going to be a little bit more challenging, and it would probably help. Let me grab a pen here, or a pencil. This is a white chalk pencil. It might show up a little better. But we want, I'm just going to mark here in the corner, 1/4 inch. Now that white's not going to show up. Let's use this one. I'm just going to mark my seam here on this one corner because we're going to be sewing a Y. And it might have been helpful if we'd even started 1/4 inch in, but I couldn't have chained them that way. But we know that 1/4 inch is right there. You can mark that too. So what we're going to do is make sure that this corner is right on top of that corner. And let's see. I will pin that. Then we're going to sew our 1/4 inch and we're going to stop right there. And then we're going to turn and take off again and finish the rest of the block. So that's how you do a Y block. Mine is kind of coming unsewed there because I clipped my seam right next to that, so it's stopping about 1/4 inch. But you can't sew it all in one seam. You have to stop, turn it, and sew it again. So I'm going to take, let's see, I think I just have 4 of these 4 over, and we will sew that Y seam on all 4 of these, and maybe then you will, if you're confused, maybe that will help you see it. Okay, I sewed a couple of these off camera, trying to make sure I could explain it to you in the best fashion, and Y seams are a little challenging. But what I did was I marked a 1/4 inch in and a 1/4 inch in right there. And that point that goes right through the center there, that point there is going to line up a 1/4 inch in. Now I went ahead and I unpicked a 1/4 of an inch and then went in and did a little bit of back stitching there so it wouldn't come out any further. And I apologize. I knew the minute I started talking about Y seams that I should have left a 1/4 inch unsewn so it would go together well. So forgive me for that. Now I am going to line this up. See, when I open this out, see that stitch right there? We're going to line it up with this corner stitch, the little corner we put there. And I'm going to put a pin there. So theoretically, when I stitch this down and I stop right at that dot, it's going to be stopping right on the seam there. So let's do that. And these squares, I think, could have been 1/8 of an inch bigger, but maybe it's because I'm not as accurate a sewer as the people who wrote the book. But this is what we were given, so that's what I'm going to do. Okay, I'm going to get right up here. And then I'm going to back stitch a couple of stitches, and I want to check and see. I didn't quite make it to the seam, so I'm going to take a couple more stitches, and then I'm going to swing this around, leaving my needle down, holding it right there in place, and I'm going to stitch this side. Sometimes you have to give it a little tug till it lays nice and smooth and iron it. But as you can see why it's called the Y seam, these two seams and this seam all come together at the same point. So let's try that one more time. I need to back stitch this a little bit. Where I took out the seam. Now I'm going to take my black square and I'm going to come in about a 1/4 of an inch on each side, put a dot there. That dot is going to line up right on where our stitching stops. So I'm going to set it like that. Oh, I've unthreaded my machine. Let me fix that. Okay, the dot is right on the seam. So right up to the dot. Swing it around. And sew up the other side. So we'll take this over to the ironing board and iron it down. Okay, I don't think my camera was on when I ironed these. If so, I'll have a duplicate of it. But can you see where the term Y seam comes from? And I ironed all these to one side the way they wanted to. It has to do with the order you sewed them, and so that they would lay nice and smooth. Some of my blocks look better than others. A little bit of a pucker there. That one's pretty good. That one, there's some thread showing I need to try to fix, and then this one's probably my best block. So it just takes a little practice to do Y seams perfectly. And as you can see, things aren't always perfectly straight out here, off ever so slightly. It's not going to hurt for a pot holder, so I'll just probably trim that up in the end. But that comes from not being perfect at making Y seams. Okay, the next thing we want to do, you lay those aside, is take these little pieces that look like houses, and we're going to take more of these triangles, and we're going to sew a triangle on one side all the way down. Then we'll come back and iron it open. Then we'll sew a triangle on the other side. This is like a flying geese, only we don't have to trim our seams afterwards because they're already trimmed for us. So let's take this over to the sewing machine and sew one side of them. I'm going to set the seam, and then I'm going to iron it open like that. Okay, I'm going to take these back over to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew these on the other side. Okay, all the pieces of our sub block are done. I don't need that anymore. So let's put our layer block out. This is the center. One of these goes in each corner. And then these go like that. So I'm going to take it over to the machine. Let me see, is this completely in your viewing area? Let me move it more like this. Move my ironing board out of the way. We'll sew these together. I'll sew these two, then and chain it to these two, and then to these two. Then I'll go back to the top and add this one on each of them. Then I'll come over here and iron them, the seams open, and then I will turn around and do the 2 rows together. Well, 3 rows, 2 seams. Okay, this time I'm not gonna clip them, you know, cut the threads, because it holds them in place. And I'm gonna iron these to the middle. I know I told you I was gonna iron everything open, but I changed my mind. It doesn't want to iron right. Well, I'll get it later. And then I'm gonna iron this to the outside. And then these toward the middle. So now our seams will nest. Now I'm going to take them over to the sewing machine and make sure I line up my corner points and that they're nesting real good with this one seam going this way, one going that way, and I'm going to stitch these 2 rows together. Okay, I'm going to iron both these seams towards the middle. All those threads. Let's see how my points look. Okay, those are pretty good. They are off a hair there. Those are good, those are good, those are good. Oh, I see this one's off just a little bit, but it's not noticeable because it's all pink. So I'm just gonna leave it. Okay, so if you were making a quilt block, you would be done with your block and you would have to make a whole bunch more to make your quilt. Since we're making, or since I'm making a potholder, I'm going to quilt it and bind it. Now, if you aren't interested in doing that, we're through. You're through. But if you are interested in seeing how the potholder goes together, just hang with me. Okay. I've taken the backing fabric and I've got a layer of batting, a layer of Insul Bright, Pellon version of it, and another layer of batting. Now I'm going to grab my 505 temporary adhesive spray and just kind of tack it all down. You don't want to overspray because it can gum up your needle, and you don't want to get outside of your area because it leaves a real sticky residue on your table or whatever. And then I'm going to put my top on it. Now I'm going to flip it over. Oh, I should have ironed out that crease. Do that now and iron it real good. That kind of helps smooth it out. Okay, I think I'll change, well, no, I don't think I'll change my thread. Maybe I should, I'll change it to pink. I think that'll be the best. And I am just going to stitch in the ditch all the way around here. Let me go change my thread and then you can watch me do my quilting. Okay, I have switched back to just my regular presser foot because that little flange on the 1/4 inch would drag on the fabric and cause us to bunch up our seams. They do make a stitch in the ditch foot. I think it's actually called a joiner foot that has a flange in the middle, and it's real easy to just put that flange right on your seam and it will help you stay on your seam. Now, I have one. Once again, it's already packed away, so I am just going to use my regular foot for this today. When you are quilting, you want to start and stop as few times as possible in the middle of the area you're quilting. You want to start and stop on the outside, and you don't want to trace over, sew over a seam more than once if you can help it. Now, can't always help it. Sometimes you have to start and stop. It's just the way the pattern is. But on this one, I'm going to do both down lines here and then across both of those. And then I'm going to come back and quilt just around the outside edge. And that way I won't be starting and stopping like if I were to do this square here in the middle and then do, part of this. I would be starting and stopping in the middle, and we want to avoid that as much as possible. I'm going to lengthen my stitch just a little bit for this, go to about 2.5. And I'm also going to raise up my presser foot a little bit so it doesn't drag down too much. Raise it just a little bit more. Raise a little more. Right, there it is quilted. Now I'm just going to square it up. Put a new blade in. Let's hope it works good. Kind of good, huh? It's not a good idea to cut towards yourself, but I'm pretty far away from this, so. Let me turn this. When you quilt, especially with as many thicknesses as there is on this, it causes it to kind of shrink up a little bit, so it's not going to be the full size like it would be in a quilt block. Okay, now we're ready to bind it. And I have to say, what happened to my vice tape I had? Oh, it fell on the floor. I have to say I'm a little bit skeptical of how they say to do this. They have you sew both sides at the same time. You wrap it on there and top stitch it. And when you get to the corner that you want for your loop, you just keep stitching and then come back in here. So we're going to try this. Now, if it doesn't work as good as I want it to, we won't do it again, but we'll try it. Okay, let's go over this. All right, let's give this a try. Is that a big enough loop? We'll get a few more stitches there. Try not to hit the camera. I'm going to stop and see if I'm catching it on the back. I am, but okay, this is not going to work. I don't like this way because it's not catching everything there. So I'm going to rip this out and I'm going to do it my way. Okay, part of the reason that didn't work is my fault. If I had cut the backing bigger than 12 inches, then when I trimmed it down, I wouldn't have had much white showing. But the other reason it's not working is because this is so thick with 3 layers of insulation here. So I am opening my bias tape up and I'm going to sew on this first fold all the way around. And back side. Okay, at this point I'm going to fold it over so I can make my loop. And I don't know how long. I'll stop about there. Oh, it kind of gathered. It's not good. Now, we will wrap this around and stick it underneath there. Okay, I folded over this end. And I'm going to tuck it in here when I sew on the front side. Okay, now I've wrapped the bias tape over to the front side. And I'm going to leave this here and catch it on the way back. Okay. Okay, I had to stop and rethread because my needle came unthreaded. This is really tough going through all these thicknesses, especially with this narrow bias tape. I prefer just to use the Insel Bright, but gosh, I want to follow the manufacturer's instructions, so. And here's our finished potholder. And while it turned out nice, it's real thick and all that, I do say the binding gave me some issues just because of how thick it was and because I was using bias tape too. I think if I had a little wider binding, it would probably have been a little easier to do. But we have our little loop that we can hang it with. And it'd be nice for setting hot dishes on. Okay, thank you for joining me today. I hope you've learned something from this and that you'll come back again next time and see what I have to sew up. I will try to have something up again in a couple of weeks, but just remember I'm in the middle of a move and it all depends on where my sewing machines are at the moment. So I will see you next time, and remember, whatever you do, do it to the glory of the Lord. Thank you.